How's it going, guys? I am Connor from Running Warehouse, and we're back with episode 5 of the Running Warehouse Connection, our new weekly show where we bring the running community together to talk about anything and everything running related. This week's guest, we've got another Olympian. She has PRs of 15:05 in the 5K and 31:35 in the 10K. We have Kim Conley. Kim, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you here. It's been a while since we've chatted. We saw you a couple years ago here in SLO. You had the full NorCal Distance Project team. You were doing mile repeats, and we were struggling just to keep up with you with our cameras. But it's been a couple years now. Things have changed. I want to know, can you give us an update on what's going on with you and how your training's going?
Yeah. I mean, things are going well. You know, it's a weird time for everybody. And, you know, I guess it's like 6 weeks ago now, you know, I was like planning on having a normal track season, getting ready for the Olympic trials, had an altitude camp here in Arizona planned, got here, shelter and order places went into effect, both in California and then in Arizona, and we own a house here. So now we're staying here indefinitely, you know, until it's safe to move about again. But training is going really well. I'm actually very happy to be here. Arizona has so much wide open space and forest roads that we can get out and run and never see another human. So I'm happy. Training is actually going really well. Yeah, I'm healthy and fit, and I have my moments where I'm like, wow, that's unfortunate because it would have been great timing in the Olympic year, but it's also, you know, great to be able to get outside and be working hard.
Awesome. Now, Flagstaff is an awesome place to train. I've ran there before, amazing trails. And of course, you've got the altitude. Is altitude something that you've always implemented into your training cycle, or is that something a little more new?
No, it's when I think my first altitude camp was in 2011. So it's been a while now. And in 2016, we bought a house here in Flagstaff. And so we're up and down a lot. I train in Sacramento kind of as my sea level base, but we're back and forth between Flagstaff and Sacramento all the time.
Perfect. Now, so when we talked about the NorCal Distance Project, that was your team for many years, and it seemed to disband. Can you talk about your experiences on that team and kind of where people have gone since then?
Yeah. I mean, we had that for a few years, and, you know, it was really fun. I liked being surrounded by other professional runners. And it was really just like, it disbanded in 2017, just kind of like a timing issue, I guess you'd say. It was like several members retired. One, Kate Grace, moved to a different training group. And so it just got to a point where it was like too many people left all at once. I was injured at the time. And I didn't want to focus on rebuilding the group in that moment when I had like enough things to sort out for myself. And so since then, right now it's just me and Drew, but we are really happy. And it is giving us some freedom, like I said, to go back and forth between Sacramento and Flagstaff and kind of tailor the structure of an entire year around exactly what is working for me. And so we're pretty content with the status quo right now.
Perfect. Now, you talked about an injury. Over your career, you've been pretty lucky to not have any big injuries, but you did have the plantar fasciitis. Can you talk about what that was like, and have you recovered fully from that, and are you back to where you were from before?
Yeah, I think anybody that's gone through plantar fasciitis knows it's so frustrating. I've had it in both feet now, and in the right foot, it lasted like 6 months, and in the left foot, it was like over 2 years. And then the other injuries that popped up because I would get frustrated and try to train with, you know, compensation issues. So yeah, things are really good right now. You know, in some ways, maybe this weird pause on competing has actually been good for me because when I was after at the end of 2018 from that injury, I felt very overly eager to race. You know, I hadn't raced in a long time. That's all I wanted to do. And so I was putting like any race I could on my schedule, whether it was, you know, the Fifth Avenue Mile or the US 10-mile championships, you know, within like a few weeks span. But I just really felt like I wanted to be out there because racing is what I love to do. But right now, all I can do is train, and I'm realizing how good that's been for me.
Awesome. Now, I know the Olympics were your next big push, and for a while you had to train not knowing if the Olympics were even going to take place. What was that training block like, knowing, you know, going through your head, you're not sure what the future holds?
Yeah, that window when, you know, I think we were all kind of seeing the writing on the wall, but the Olympics hadn't been postponed yet. That was probably the most like stressful few weeks I've had because, you know, the Olympics, the Olympic trials were still on the schedule, and I have an idea of how to be in the best possible shape at the Olympic trials, and that involves racing. And all my other races were canceled. And then on top of that, gyms were closed, tracks were closed. So I was like, wait, how are we going to get to June in the best possible like peak fitness without any of these other things that I need? So it was actually a relief when they announced the postponement, because at least then I could like step back and not worry about trying to be in peak shape.
Yeah. Timing your peak is so important. And now that we're looking at, you know, the Olympics could come in a year or so, how is this going to change your training philosophy? Or are things going to be a little bit chiller for a little bit? How do you go about, you know, timing a peak with so much uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, right now we work backwards as if the Olympics and Olympic trials are taking place in 2021, you know, and fingers crossed that a vaccine is developed and implemented in time for all that. But we are certainly like planning as if that will all take place. And so then that will look like a normal track season. Pretty much the track season I had planned for 2020, we'll just move it to 2021. And so right now it's more about like being in touch with the side of running, you know, that I just love, and just being really grateful to be able to get outdoors and explore the area around here. And so I'm just really like happy to be staying active and grateful that I am healthy and that I can build this huge base. But mostly I'm just focused on enjoying it.
Yeah, enjoying it is, you know, half the battle. You know, it's, you got to get to that line mentally, you know, with it and happy and ready to go. Now, when we talk about the trials coming up, we've got the 5K, the 10K, and then, you know, even for someone like you hit a marathon qualifying time. Obviously, it looks like the marathon isn't going to be in the near future, but how do you go about picking the right event? Are you going to attempt the 5 and the 10, or is that more of a game day decision?
So my plan for 2020 had been to try to run the 10,000 meter standard at Peyton Jordan. And if I had hit it, I would have focused on the 10,000 at the Olympic trials. And so I think that's still my plan for next year. It's really nice that I have the 5,000 meter standard, especially after my experience in 2016, when I was focused on the 10,000, my shoe came off at the trials. You know, thank God I had a backup in the 5,000 and could go make the team in the 5,000. So after that experience, I really believe in having options. But I'd like my focus to be on the 10,000.
Yeah. Now, the marathon, I know you've been starting to dabble into these longer distances. Where do you see that playing a role in the next few years? Is that kind of going to be the transition over to full-time marathoner, or do you think you have a couple more years on the track?
Yeah, it's actually almost the biggest wrinkle in my long-term plan that's kind of, you know, affected by this postponement, because I really thought like, okay, I'm going to be on the track through 2020. Then I'm going to give myself 4 years to master the marathon before 2024. And now the timeline is just so much more compressed. So I don't know the answer to that yet. But certainly I want to be doing this through 2024, and I anticipate that I'll be at the marathon trials in 2024. But I don't know exactly when the next marathon will go on the calendar.
Yeah. Now, I feel like you've always excelled in the 5K, but you're also a great 10K runner. Do you feel like the longer the distances go, there are more opportunities for you? Do you find yourself more being a long distance runner, more of a strength runner, or you've ran very well in the 5K? Do you think where do you think you kind of lie for your strengths?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because from a training standpoint, it seems like strength is my strength. I really thrive on doing big long runs and, like 10 to 12 by tempo miles, workouts like that. I kind of feel like are my bread and butter. But I was very humbled by my first marathon experience. So that certainly cast a little doubt in terms of wow, I thought I was going to be made for the marathon, and it was so hard. And yeah, I mean, arguably my best PR is my 5,000 meter PR. So I'm not really sure, but one thing I've definitely learned just by watching other people is that the marathon can take a long time to figure out. And I think I look at peers in the sport, just some of the great athletes like Molly or Emily Sisson or Tina Castor, and they all have these great marathon debuts. So I just wanted to be able to hold myself to that same standard. But I can accept that maybe it's going to take time and work and patience and just trying it over and over before it really clicks for me.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the strange things about the marathon is any day something can happen. Even veterans go out and have off days or something doesn't go right. And with 26 miles over 2 hours, there's just so much room for error. So I have no doubt your next marathon will be up to your standards and you're going to excel. So I'm happy to see that. But let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back to 2012, your first Olympic team. That picture, we threw it all over social. We constantly use it. It was that picture of you just shocked to be making your first Olympic team. Can you talk about what that felt like? And did you see that coming beforehand, or was that as much as shocked as you looked in that picture? Was that really how you felt? Did you see that coming?
The picture is very genuine. If I'd been a little more composed, maybe I would have reined it in front of all the cameras, but I was really shocked. And I think everybody was shocked, but part of it, I believed I could make the Olympic team. So it's I'd run 15:24. The Olympic standard was 15:20. And my entire career, I've never been somebody that just come out of nowhere and had a huge breakthrough where I take 15 or 20 seconds off a 5K PR. It's been these little increments that added up year after year after year. But so when I was going into the Olympic trials, I only needed a 5-second PR, and I've done that so many times in my life. So I was like, well, I could run the Olympic standard. It's not ideal to have to do it in a championship setting. But I also was looking at the field, and I thought I could finish in the top 3. Again, kind of improbable to do both in the same moment. But I knew it was possible. But I think part of why I was so shocked was during the race, I was trying to push the pace and keep us on standard pace. And I didn't do a good job. And I looked at the clock at 3,000 meters and I was like, oh my gosh, we're way too slow. This is not going to happen. And so I gave up mentally on the idea of making the Olympic team 3,000 meters into the race. And I faded back as far as 8th place. And then I rallied. And I just, I realized that I'd worked so hard over 3 years with Drew to get there. And, when I graduated from UC Davis 3 years before, the only goal I had was to be at the Olympic trials. And so it was wow, it was amazing that I made this huge transition and had gone to the Olympic trials and thinking I might contend for a top 3 finish. And so I kind of rallied and was no, I just have to keep fighting and try to get on the podium. I really thought the Olympic standard was out the window. I didn't think that was possible anymore, but I just when I saw Julia fading, I thought I could still just stand on the podium and that would be this huge accomplishment and thrill. And so that's what I was gunning for at the end of that race. And I leaned at the line to get third. And so then when the results finally posted after they, mulled through the photo finish and the Olympic rings were next to my name and I'd run under the standard, that's what was just so crazy, was that it had actually, like, that fast finish had actually led to the standard as well. And it actually made the team.
Wow. That must have been insane. But now, looking back, you've now done it twice. You're looking now for your third Olympic team for coming in 2021. What is that like? How have the goals changed? Because I imagine it was such a big deal your first time, and every time you do it, it must, it's almost like it's just expected from you nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to put that kind of pressure on myself, but I know, but you're right. Yeah, it's like the beauty of 2012 was there was no pressure or expectation, and I had nothing to lose. And it was definitely different in 2016, and it feels different now. But I'm trying to just focus on 2021 as its own entity and its own battle. I think it's harder than ever now to make an Olympic team. I just think American distance running for women has gotten so competitive. Not to mention the standards are a lot harder. So, I'm trying to see all that as kind of like a positive. Like, I get to continue like rising with all the boats, and I'm getting faster in the process. And I love to compete. And so, it's fun to keep getting out there and having these great battles with other women.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear you talk about the levels of distance running in America growing, because we had Jared Ward on recently, and he had that exact same feeling of when he was in the trials for the marathon in 2020. He was looking around left and right, and the amount of people that were all on 2:10 pace halfway through the race just shocked him. He never expected that. And you look at the women's side too, so many people stepped up. So I think it really does go to show that American distance running right now is just high, and continuing on into the track trials, I'm sure we'll see just as much competition. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Now you just talked about the big jump you made in 2012, but there was lots of incremental growth along the way. Can you talk about from high school to college to pro and then Olympics, what that was like? Because I know if you look back at your high school times, you were always a good runner, but there was no real signs that you were going to become, one of the greatest American runners ever.
Yeah. I mean, I look back and I think I was kind of lucky, because I was a little bit like in the shadow of other great runners in my time. So I went to the same high school as Sarah Bay at the time. So she was a senior when I was a freshman. She was 4-time state champion in cross country. And there were so many other great runners. Like another runner in our league was also a Foot Locker national champion in addition to Sarah while I was there. And so I just, like, nobody was ever looking at me and saying like, this is someone that could win state, or this is someone that could go to Foot Locker nationals. So my foundation in sport was just based on love. Like, I loved running. I had a beautiful state park, Annandale State Park in Santa Rosa, that I'd go do long runs in just because I loved exploring. And I just, like, my commitment to excellence and the kind of like competitive side of me was refined over time. And so I went on to UC Davis, and I just kept PRing every year. But, my first 5,000 ever was 17:27. So not really that remarkable. So, I mean, I don't want to say it was a bad time, because for some people that's a great time, but it's over 2 minutes slower than an Olympic standard, so there was just no sign that I was ever going to be someone that would compete on a national level in that way. But I think because I never had those expectations on me, like, the satisfaction I got from competing was the chase of PRs and bettering myself. And so that's what I was focused on for so many years. I had until I got injured in 2015, I had a 16-year PR streak. And so that's what I was doing every year was, you know, I just thought like that was the process, was you just kept trying to PR. And those PRs added up over time, and until I was someone that could be in the hunt for an Olympic standard.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy how much each little step of the way over time added up to what you are now, which is just incredible. Now, when we look at how good you are now, and look some of the workouts maybe you did in high school now today, there's been quite a jump. And when you were here in SLO, you did, I believe, an 8-by-mile workout, and it averaged somewhere in the low 5-minute range, which is incredible. Is that still a staple workout in your lineup? And is there any other workouts that you do that you know indicate you're in peak shape, ready to go for the Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, and it depends a little bit on the time of year. So yes, a mile repeats workout like that, definitely still a staple. I also just like in a kind of in a base phase or a strength phase, I love fartleks. I, I think I'm so good at fartleks. But then when you move on to the track, I really like 5,000 meter or just like race pace specific work. So I really like to do things like 6x K or 6x mile if I'm getting ready for the 10,000, and be able to drum out the pace that I want to run. And that's when I can do that and feel like I could even shorten the recoveries. Then that's when I know, like, okay, I'm in really good shape. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear, because a lot of times when you start getting in better shape, a lot of people think, let's go faster. And sometimes the best way to enhance your workout, make it a little harder, is just lower the rest.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then, so when you talk about these workouts you're doing and you say you're aiming for splits around race pace, are you going off of your current fitness, kind of an estimate? Are you going off of your last race? How do you come up with those splits?
Yeah, ideally it's coming off your last race. You know, sometimes early in the season that's harder to gauge. But Drew's my husband and coach. He has this workout we'll do sometimes kind of early season when we're transitioning onto the track that I really like. It's really good for me. And it also kind of gives us a good indication of where I am. And basically he used to take the watch away from me. Now he can trust me to not actually look at my watch. But basically you don't get any time feedback, and you run a mile on the track at what you perceive would be like an opening mile in the 5,000. Then you leave the track, you go do a 2-mile tempo off track, come back to the track, and then you run another mile hard, like as if you're closing a 5,000. So I don't know if you call that all out, but I guess it is kind of all out because it's the 4th mile of a 4-mile workout, and you're making it the effort of closing down on the 5,000. And usually I surprise myself in that workout. You know, when I get the time at the end of what I ran for that last mile, I'm like, oh wow, okay, I'm in better shape than I thought. And that also gives us an indication of like, yeah, that probably is your 5K pace right now.
Wow. That's interesting to hear. Yeah, I have that same issue sometimes when you're getting into track season or cross season, and you think you're in a certain fitness, but you don't really know. And sometimes that can end up being bad because you go too hard in the workout. So I think that is really cool to hear. It's a nice little gauge to show where you're at and you know, what you should be doing for your workout. So that's cool to hear. Now, workouts are interesting. I love hearing that, but the fans want to know about running shoes. And, you know, when we talked with you before, I know you've had some particular favorites. You used to love running in the 1400s, but things have changed a lot since we talked with you last. Carbon fiber plate shoes are all over the market. What is your take on carbon fiber plate shoes? Are you using them? Are you using several of them? I know New Balance has an amazing collection right now. What's your take?
Yeah, I'm really lucky that New Balance has choices. It's pretty amazing. The technology is pretty crazy, and it's exciting. I mean, I admit at first I was kind of like, oh wow, this is really changing things, and I was a little bit like reluctant at first. Well, I mean, I wasn't reluctant to actually try them for myself, but just in kind of like the general spirit of the sport. But you know, now I'm on board. I'm rolling with it, and New Balance is even developing spikes like based off the 5280 flat. And actually, I would say in this whole postponement and with the cancellation of all the races, that's what I get most sad about. Is I look at those spikes that I haven't got to race in yet, and I'm just like, oh man, like I was so excited to race in these spikes. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. I've tried the 5280 flats. There are the TC Elites and the RC Elites, and the RC Elites are probably my favorite. That's what I raced Gate River in and do most of my training in when I'm wearing them in training.
Okay, that's interesting. I want to dive a little bit deeper in this because I feel like each of these shoes, we could go off for 10 minutes talking about it. So let's start with the 5280. That was built for the road mile, Jenny Simpson. Have you used that shoe? I think that was the first one to come out, and I imagine that was the first one you used.
Yep.
Have you used it in a road mile, or was that something that you just used in training? How did that shoe start off in your cycle?
So I've only used it in training so far, just because I haven't raced a road mile since I got them. They're super aggressive. It reminds me of being able to put on a spike, but you're on the roads. And so 100% I would wear them in a road mile, and you know, hopefully eventually a road mile is on my schedule because I can't wait.
Yeah, I have the 5280 here. I bring them out. You know, it is a little bit more niche of a shoe. It's a little lower to the ground, like you say, very aggressive. It's got the carbon fiber plate. So that is, it's a unique shoe. And I don't know if you feel this way, but when you get the shoe on, it's almost a little uncomfortable at first because you're like, what is this? Once you start going in that kind of 5-minute pace range and even under, the shoe just like has another gear. It has this magical feel. Is that kind of a similar feel that you have with that shoe?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I feel like the best comparison is to compare them to a spike, because when you put spikes on, you're just gonna go walk around. You're like, this is awkward. But then you start running fast, like do a stride, and you're like, woo, I feel great. And that's exactly what that flat feels like. You're just not on a track. You're out on the roads doing your strides, but you feel like you could be on a track in spikes.
Yeah, that's why I love that shoe. And there really isn't another shoe on the market that's like that. So that's where New Balance started. Then we're going to move a little bit further. We get the New Balance TC, Fuelcell TC. And that shoe, it's a little weird because it was the next generation in carbon fiber plates for New Balance. But the weight, when you look at it, it's in that low 9-ounce range. It's not exactly comparable to some of the other carbon plate shoes on the market. But I think people got a little confused comparing that because the shoe really isn't supposed to be a substitute for a Vaporfly or the Endorphin Pro. It's more of that performance trainer. It's got the carbon fiber plate. It's got the Fuelcell midsole. It's more versatile. Can you talk about how that shoe has worked into your lineup and what you've used it for?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like you say. It's more like a longer workout training shoe that's going to give you like a bounce to your stride. It's super like responsive and springy, which is really fun and I really like. But yeah, it doesn't have that same kind of like aggressive feel for racing.
Yeah. So, and I imagine you've probably been using that in your tempo days, maybe intervals where you don't want to get beat yourself up. But when we want to look at peak performance, when we're looking at what is New Balance doing to make the lightest shoe, the fastest shoe, something that is going to be right up there with a Nike Vaporfly, with a Saucony Endorphin Pro, we're going to look at the New Balance Fuelcell Elite, RC Elite. Now, that shoe hasn't came out yet. It's coming out in the fall. I know you have a pair. What are your thoughts on that shoe so far, and how does it differ from its training counterpart, the TC?
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite flat ever. It's it's got that same kind of like bouncy feel to the TC, but it just feels a little more aggressive. Like you put it on and you feel like you're like, ooh, I want to like jump into these strides. I want to jump into this race. It gives you more of that like traction and feeling like you're like really like pushing off the ground and running fast.
Yeah. Now I have an RC Elite prototype. I know it's come a long way. And, once we see it in fall, I think people are going to be really surprised. And when we talk about all the carbon plate shoes on the market, there's just so much competition. There's options. And I think people are going to be happy to try that one out. When we compare it to the TC, I think the one thing that the TC is going to have over the RC is the durability component. It is a little heavier. It has more rubber. It has a little bit more stable of an upper. So I think for training, for your workouts, for your day-to-day stuff, the TC is going to be the shoe. But for race day, RC Elite's going to be the shoe.
Yeah.
What do you think? I guess for the marathon distance, for workouts, that's probably going to be where you're going to use the RC Elite. Is there any other days that you might bring that shoe out?
Yes, workouts. Sometimes even with like long workouts, I might still wear the 1500 or the 1400 and then at the end bring that out just to like, it's kind of like the track equivalent of like you do some of the workout in flats and then you put on spikes. So sometimes I'm just using it at the end of workouts to give me a little extra edge. Or I'll even use it for hill sprint days, which is like, for me, like very short, very fast. The equivalent on the track is like putting on spikes and doing 80 linear all out sprints. But if we're out on the roads, then I love the RC Elite for those also.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear that you're still cycling in the 1400 and 1500 into your training, because with this kind of carbon fiber plate movement, I feel like everyone is only using these shoes for their training, and a lot of the old kind of reliable and still really good shoes like the 1400 and 1500 are kind of being forgotten. Why do you think you still utilize that in your training, and what are some of the benefits to a shoe like a 1400?
Yeah. I've had the plantar fasciitis issues like we've talked about, and the carbon fiber plate, the beauty of it is it's giving you that same like aggressive structure that you have in a track spike, and you get to use it out on the roads. The danger there is you can be putting that kind of stress on your body for really, really long road workouts. And so I'm trying to be mindful of using it kind of judiciously for, just for the sake of my body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's weird because with these carbon fiber plate shoes, a lot of times people are using them in their marathons and they're saying, my legs just feel so much better after the marathon. It's helping with recovery. But then other times you do hear people think, maybe it's straining your Achilles, or, it is an aggressive shoe. So it's interesting to hear kind of the different takes. And I think that comes down to the individual athlete. Some people are gonna, need different shoes and different needs, just because someone like Molly Huddle, I know we talked with Jared, and he said that Molly really didn't see as much benefit from some of these carbon fiber plate shoes, and even she was dealing with injuries from it. So it really does come down to just the individual needs of the runner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a friend that could do all her track workouts in spikes, and I would never, I don't think I could get away with that. And so I think, again, it's individual differences. It's your mechanics and your foot strike. And I think that also, it affects kind of like the ability to get injured. It also affects just like how much benefit you get from them. I think, there's some athletes that aren't wearing them because they think that, their normal foot strike gets them the same like return or whatever. I'm not in that category. I think they give great benefit.
That's cool. That's cool. Now, we talked about the benefits of some of these shoes that are coming, but you mentioned a spike, and I think that is what interests me the most. I still race a lot on the track. I know it's a little secretive right now, but can you maybe explain what is to come in the track and field world for New Balance?
Yeah, it's I mean, yeah, for what I know so far, and like I have one prototype that I think probably it's going to be evolved from there by the time we have a track season again. But it's basically taking all the technology from the 5280 flat and combining it with the MD 800 spike, which is my favorite spike also. So it's exciting.
That's awesome. Now, was this inspired by you at all? Did you have any requests, or is this something that has been in the works for a while?
I think it's been in the works. Yeah, I mean, and there might be two, because I think Emma wore something in Doha different even than what I have. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been in the works, and I think there were athletes that were wearing them really successfully indoors.
Yeah, and I'm sure these spikes, not only from New Balance, but from Nike, from Saucony, from all the brands, we're going to start seeing carbon fiber plate technology and just future technology start ciphering into track spikes. What are your thoughts on the progression of shoes in general, but in the track world, how is that going to make a difference for runners? And do you think that's good, bad for the sport, or just kind of what happens with time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can say whether it's good or bad for the sport, because I think we just have to accept it. You know, it's happening. You know, no, like in the same way that developments with track surfaces have happened, or you know, when the pole vault moved to like carbon fiberglass, yeah, that technology. So yeah, so it's happening, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see lots of records go down because I think the spikes are really working.
That's cool, and I can't wait to see what's to come, because I know in the distance world, in the mid distance world, and in the sprint world, there's a lot of cool stuff to come. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. But I'm excited.
Yeah.
Now let's move a little bit forward. I reached out to the fans on social media, and they came back at me with some questions for you. So I am going to read those for you. So question number 1, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Would you ever consider an ultra marathon?
Oh man. Of course I'd consider it. Yeah, I mean, but you know, I was just so humbled by my marathon experience when I really thought like, oh, like I'm gonna be great at the marathon, and God, it was horrible. But you know, like, because I've spent so much of my career now in Sacramento, and so you know, I see Western States going on every year. So for a long time, there's just, I think because it's out there, you know, the idea that there are people that are running 100 miles. There's just yeah, there is a certain appeal. So I think it is a distinct possibility that I'll do that eventually. I also like being here in Flagstaff right now, and without any races on the schedule. I also have like this huge urge to just like run to the top of every mountain here. And so, you know, like Drew's been a little bit like worried, almost like, oh my gosh, are you going to turn into a mountain runner after this? But I don't know. We did a really, really hard one the other day, and it made me reconsider.
Yeah, no, that's I have the same feeling here. I've done a couple pretty crazy descents that I would normally never do, but now that there's not really a track season, you can be a little crazier with your training. I've done it, and it's fun. So that's interesting to hear. Now, it's also interesting to hear that you would consider an ultramarathon, because I think a lot of people in your space who are, you know, elite 5K, 10K marathoners, they don't really end up ever going that route. If you did, what race do you think interests you the most? You mentioned Western States, but there's also really cool races like Barkley. There's, you know, Hard Rock. Is there any would you go crazier, or would you like to kind of keep things tame for your first one?
I think I have to keep things tame for my first one. Yeah, we'll see. And certainly I wouldn't even start with 100 miles. Well, let's be honest. I have to figure out the marathon first. Then we can talk about going a little bit farther than that.
Okay, well, I think it's exciting to hear that you're even considering it. So I look forward to seeing your debut ultra. Now, the second question I had for you stood out to me because I didn't even know that this was a thing. But I was asked, when do you think your book will be officially released?
Oh, that is not happening. So there was somebody that was working on a biography about me, but for several reasons, it didn't work out with him. And so, yeah, so the project is terminated.
It's unfortunate because I personally I was interested to hear the whole Kim Conley story, but maybe one day we can do a video
Yeah.
video biography documentary to get the story out there. All right, so our third and final question is, what are 3 things that you can't go a day without thinking about?
Oh man, can't go a day without thinking about. Well, food is a very obvious answer. I pretty much wake up thinking about like, I'm ready for breakfast. Running, racing, I think I would say specifically. In fact, like, even in this weird time, like I can go about my day very normally and just kind of like in with the flow, and I'm fine with everything. And it seems like every night when I put my head on the pillow, that's when I get my little wave of like, oh man, like I'm so excited to race. Like, when am I going to race? And that's just like normal, like people talk about like structuring visualization and stuff before races. And I first learned about it, I was like, I feel like that's what I do in the shower every night. Like I'm always thinking about races. And then a third one, probably my dog. He's special little character in my life.
Well, I personally don't have a dog, but running and food, I can heavily relate with you about. I think 90% of my day is composed of thinking about those 2 things. I'm going to throw it back at you. What's your favorite food? I saw on Instagram you had some pretty fancy steak.
Yeah.
Is that your go-to, or what's your favorite food post race after you just ran a 20-mile run?
Yeah, so I actually got sponsored by a company called Wagyu Man that does Wagyu beef, and that has been absolutely amazing. And it's cool because like nutrition is so important for an athlete, and like the quality of ingredients you're cooking with, and so to have like this really, really high quality meat with like healthy omega-3 fatty acids and iron, like it's awesome. In terms of like that indulgement after a race, like a burger and a Guinness with sweet potato fries. Yeah.
Classic. Now, the Wagyu, I'm going to go back to this because I was first introduced to this a couple months ago. We were on a fancy trip with Nike, and I got the Wagyu, and it was something like I've never had before. Can you explain to our viewers how that differentiates itself from just your run-of-the-mill steak you get from the grocery store?
Yeah. So what I'm getting is Japanese Wagyu, and it's the way the cows have been like cared for and raised, and then it just like creates this amazing marbling in the meat, and it's so tender. It's just completely different than any other type of red meat I've ever had.
Wow. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. Yeah. Steak is up there on my top of my favorite food. So next time you come in slow, you're gonna have to cook me some Wagyu because well, great. Thanks for letting us know some special things that people maybe have never heard about Kim Conley. Now, for the people who want to know even more, maybe want to see some more Wagyu steak on your Instagram, where can they find you?
So Instagram is probably the best place. My handle is KF Conley. Posting on there all the time right now. And I respond to all my messages. So anyone that, you know, wants to connect, that's an easy way to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely connect with Kim if you're out there. Also, we're hoping to have you maybe back here in SLO once this is all over. Would love to get you back on our YouTube channel. People love seeing you crank away at your intervals, and yeah, that's a goal of ours to have you back out here in the future.
Cool. I would love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with us, getting to know you a little bit more. Until next time, that was the Running Warehouse Connection.